Thank you so much for that explanation. And before we get to the questions and comments, I thought it would be great for us to walk through the format of the discussion. The following questions and comments were found on social media related to CRT, and the other questions were developed by members of the Hampton Roads Black Caucus Committee Action Team. We will allow 1 minute responses for the comments and 2 minute responses for the questions. If we have time at the end, we will open it up for Q&A from the audience, folks that are listening via YouTube or Facebook. So we will get to comment number 1, which is from Kimberlé Crenshaw. It's an approach to grappling with a history of white supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past, and the laws and systems that grow from that past are detached from it. It is an approach to grappling with a history of white supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past, and that the laws and systems that grow from the past are detached from it. We'll start with former school board member Smith Jones.
Here on CRT, so I appreciate that that quote from her. So it's an approach to grappling with the history of white supremacy that rejects that belief. And what they're saying is that it's in the past, we no longer think about it, it no longer exists. And is that really true that it no longer exists? And when we think about what's happening and how laws and systems are established now, literally in 2021, does it have an impact on what had happened before in the past? And does the past influence the future, the present? And I think it does. I don't think it's detached. I think it does indeed influence the present.
Thank you. And we'll move to Dr. Best.
Well, I think that this comment is based on a fallacy in that if the belief is the past is in the past and the laws and systems that grew from it, we're detached from it. I think nothing could be further from the truth. And in order for us to correct many of the injustices that were done in the past, we have to grapple with we have to acknowledge to go back and rectify many of the injustices that were done in the past. We have no choice but to go back and deal with the past. So if that is a belief as to what CRT is, that's a fallacy. We can't leave what's in the past in order to move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Best. Dr. King? I think you're still on mute, Dr. King.
Yes, I believe you're muted.
I was going to say we can't really move forward until we know where we've been. And we also know that the best predictor of our future is our past. And so I think the statement is based out of ignorance about the influence of the past on the present and on the future. So we would be remiss if we didn't consider the past, the inequities, the flaws, the disappointments, the hurts and injuries of the past, so that we can devise a plan to not repeat those types of behaviors in the future. So I definitely feel that we have to consider the past, that it's a vital piece of the present and the future.
I want to jump in here with the second comment, if you will, and I'm going to begin with Dr. King. But regarding critical race theory and individuals like myself, do you think it is a valid concern that critical race theory might be seen as something to make white people feel guilty? And if so, what might be your opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with feeling guilty. I think it has more to do with accountability. And just because something happened in the past doesn't mean that it's not relevant today. People are in prison today because of things that they did 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So once again, I think, it's out of ignorance to assume that the past is the past and this is just a way to punish people. It's really a way to inform people, to educate people, and to hold people accountable.
All right. Dr. Best, what might be your opinion on that?
As far as CRT being designed to make white people feel guilty, that statement in of itself, to me, it even reinforces even more the need for CRT. Because for someone to actually sit around or to think that there were a group of people that sat around to say, let's come up with this theory. Let's look at things and see how we can make white people feel guilty. For you to think that, then you have to think of yourself some kind of way. So I just really think that statement is kind of ridiculous, but more so, it's very, very sad.
Ms. Smith-Jones, what would be your opinion on the idea that CRT might make white people feel guilty?
I don't think so. It's the truth. You know, oftentimes when we deal with the truth, the truth and facts, it might feel that someone is coming after us, that someone is attacking us. And therefore, when we feel that way with the lack of knowledge, we oftentimes feel guilty. So do I believe that it was designed to make people feel guilty? Absolutely not. I think it was designed to educate people, to have people to learn a different way and different things perhaps they don't know. And oftentimes when we're faced with things we don't know and we have to face the reality and it's uncovered, then we feel like someone is attacking us or coming after us. But absolutely, I don't think it was designed to make anyone feel guilty. I think it was designed to empower and to educate others.
Just to interject a little bit of my own personal view here as being someone who is white, I don't want to approach it as something that should cause me to feel anxious or any guilty in a way. It's just maybe it's something that I could also use to help educate everyone as possible. That way we can improve things. So I think I like the idea of bringing CRT to as many people as possible, so more people like me can change for the better. Or at least that would be my opinion on that. It doesn't have to make me feel guilty.
Thank you. So this up next is a question, so to allow you more time to elaborate, 2 to 3 minutes, and we'll go Dr. King, Mrs. Smith, and Dr. Best. In 2021, we have definitive differences in education, employment, home ownership, law enforcement, policing, and health among racial makeups of our nation. The preamble of the Constitution glorifies the effort of the people to strive for a more perfect union. Is it actually within our strive for a more perfect union that the CRT and equity-based education will actually help achieve a more perfect union?
Yeah. I think CRT is a great way to educate people, to bring some of the issues to the attention of the body. Once we acknowledge things, we can address them. If we don't first acknowledge them, then there's no solution to the problem. So I definitely feel that it's important for us to bring this to the attention of the masses. And I do believe that we can have a more perfect union if people are educated, if we bring groups of people together so that they can see that really we have more in common than we have differences. I think it's going to take some time and it's going to take some work, but all of us can be a part of the solution, and we all have a role to play if we want equity in our communities, in our society, and in the country.
Thank you.
Okay. Shall I just jump right in next?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, so I think it is within our strive with CRT to become a more perfect union, because with more information, we're building our schools and we're building our education now, especially through this virtual world. Then we want to look at the equity within it. And I think that's so important, the equity within it. And the more we try to better ourselves and better things and the tools that we have, even if it's CRT, I think it's important that we strive for excellence within that. So can we achieve that? If we have the will, I truly believe that we can achieve it. And it's going to take time. it takes lots of time to educate those who do not understand what CRT is and what the different acronyms are and the different programs that we need to bring in to help our children. Because we need to now start providing, especially after learning throughout this virtual world and virtual learning, what do our students really need? I think we found that out now. They have different needs in education. And what do they want? I think now it's okay to see what cultural capital our children bring to the classrooms and to the educational system themselves. And CRT is a great tool that we can help manage that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Best?
Okay. I think that the preamble of the Constitution is one of the most profound things that was ever written. And in its purest form, for what I think it actually means, as opposed to what was written when the founding fathers wrote it, because there were a group of people that were excluded. So I'm taking it at its face value for what it actually says to form a more perfect union. And I think that CRT lays the groundwork, or it provides a means where everyone is able to have equal access to things such as education and housing and employment, and they have an opportunity to be their best selves, and they have an opportunity to come together with one another, not competitive, not being jealous, not thinking you are able to have something that I'm not able to have, or that I owe you something. When the playing field is level and everyone has the opportunity and the access, I think we'll be able to work towards forming a perfect union.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to jump in here with the next more of a comment type situation. I'll begin with Miss Sandra Smith-Jones here. Here it is. The Florida Educational Department decided to implement aspects of CRT in their curriculum, and Governor Ron DeSantis removed those aspects, stating, "There's no room in our classrooms for things like critical race theory. Teaching kids to hate their country and to hate each other is not worth 1 red cent of taxpayer money." So I would like you to touch on how you might view his opinions could be wrong or right on that.
It's quite political. First of all, the statement, "There's no room in our classrooms for things like critical race theory," I do not agree with that. And the second part, teaching kids to hate their country and to hate each other is not worth 1 red cent of taxpayer money. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Who's doing that? Who would do that? What educator would absolutely do something like that? Then whoever's hiring that person, we need to question the people, the board, the administrators who hired someone who would actually teach something like that. And that's why we have administrators who are evaluating and observing our teachers. So no one should do that. And that's not a part of CRT that I know of. So we need to be, conscious and cognizant of all pieces and parts of it. And what are people doing, maybe disguising, saying it is CRT when it's not, if they're actually doing that. But as a teacher and an educator myself for over 20 years, I would be totally disheartened. And as an administrator, if I knew someone was in the classroom teaching hate in any program. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. King, what would be your opinion on how Governor DeSantis is approaching it as a curriculum topic?
Well, I think you always have to consider the source. And you have to look at historically the choices that he has made for the people in his state. And a perfect example is COVID-19 and how that was handled. So, you have to look at a person's history so that you understand where they're coming from. This has absolutely nothing to do with teaching hate. It has to do with informing people and educating people so that we can move in the right direction, so that we can improve the system, and so that we can work better together. So, I don't agree with a lot of his policies and choices that he's made. I think his judgment is grossly impaired. And And we definitely should be in these schools educating these kids. And I think through the educational process, we actually bring people together when we understand where we all came from, when we understand clearly what our mission is together, and we can move forward together in that direction.
Thank you so much. Dr. Bess, what would be your take on the words of Governor DeSantis?
Well, I concur with Dr. King and Ms. Smith for both of their entire statements. I think he is totally wrong in his opinion as to what it is. And I believe that CRT actually is needed. He demonstrates that it's needed even more because you have a belief as to the way things are now or have been in the past, that they are actually okay. And I can give you an example of history, the way history is. And one of the components of CRT is to tell the truth, the whole truth, and to present the good, the bad, and the ugly. As a former administrator, I actually had a colleague, and she ran across a teacher that was teaching the class about Nat Turner. And he kept saying to the students, he was crazy. He was crazy. And the teacher, she waited. They were towards the end of the class. And so she waited to talk with this teacher until after the conversation. And she said, can you share with me a little as to why you were saying that? And he said, well, this man, Nat Turner, he killed women and children. She said he killed women and children so that his women and children would not be killed as they had been throughout the years. So his family would not be held in bondage. So he would not be a slave. So you gave one side of the story, and it's very, very slanted. And you're making an impression upon these students and forming opinions. And then you're disregarding the feelings, the history, and the perspectives that others have had as far as Nat Turner is concerned. So critical race theory, it takes these things into consideration. There has been some systematic ways that things are presented as far as education is concerned that's damaging generations and populations of students. So I'm definitely 100% I disagree with the governor of Florida.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think this next question is a perfect segue into what you just shared, Dr. Bess, about what is taught and what is not taught in the classroom. And the question is, if it's important to mention and discuss the input of individuals like Thomas Jefferson or George Washington in the creation of the country's society and government, is it beyond acceptable to address the fact that society and government they created directly manifested disparate social status and rights of peoples? And we'll start with Mrs. Smith-Jones.
Can I pass on that one?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
Dr. King?
Well, I think you have to look at the time of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and what was going on around them and what was the acceptable social norm at the time. So, of course, the rules, the regulations, the behaviors of that time would be different from what you would expect today. There have been so many changes over many years. And so the system at that time was definitely skewed, and it was based on prejudice and slavery and a history that a lot of us would prefer to forget. So I definitely think they were a victim of their time, and what they practiced, what they preached, what they believed, what they taught was based on the social norms at that time.
Right. Dr. Bess, I know you shared a bit about this a little bit earlier. Did you want to comment on this question?
Yes, I think it is important to mention and discuss individuals like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, because again, that's one of the misconceptions about CRT, is that we're trying to erase white history. And nowhere in CRT is white history trying to be erased. We just want the whole truth to be told. So when you talk about Thomas Jefferson, talk about the great writings and the thoughts and the forming of a country, the things that he envisioned. But at the same time, there was an entire race of people or entire group of people that were not included in his thoughts. So yes, we should mention them, but we don't need to tell part of the story or the story should be skewed. We should tell all of the story.
Thank you.
I would sort of agree on that. I would like to look at the idea that they have included something and they may not have included a lot as well. And it is worth as much learning about them as what they may have had faults with. And I also want to bring up here the next thing here. It's a little more important to the point. Critical race theory says that white supremacy is a problem. And I guess that is more or less the point. There is definite inequity, and white supremacy definitely is the definition of that. So let's begin with Dr. Best. What would your stance regarding white supremacy and CRT, how do they mesh?
Well, it is a problem if you don't acknowledge it. And we have people that they just really believe it does not exist. So if you don't believe something exists, if you don't believe there is a problem, then you're not going to make any type of motion towards solving what you don't perceive as a problem. So that is why CRT says white supremacy is a problem. And it is a problem because many people just won't even acknowledge it. So that's the beginning of the problem. That's what I'll say at this point.
Let's go with Ms. Smith-Jones. What's your opinion on how the two relate?
Okay. When we talk about white supremacy or anybody being supreme over anyone else as human beings, and that's a problem within itself. And then I think we go back to acknowledgement. If you cannot acknowledge that there are some things that you have power over that we should all be equal in, and you don't acknowledge that, you think it's okay, then yes, that's a problem. And if critical race theory brings that out because it brings out a lot of truth, then that's something that we have to accept and others have to accept, be they white, black, or whatever, that if white supremacy is existing, and it's something that's over someone else and holding others down and oppressing others, and that's not right. That's not fair. And that's something that we need to be able to see for all people. Because anytime we say that one person or one race is more supreme than the other, you don't need CRT to shed light on that to say that's wrong. Okay, so we're all equal and we're all created equal. And I think that, you know, if CRT brings that out, that's very, very important. So no one is supreme over anyone else. And I just think it goes back to people feeling guilty when the truth is exposed.
Thank you very much. Dr. King, how would you approach the idea that white supremacy is a problem within the greater framework of critical race theory?
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to first say that I agree with all the comments that have been made. And our society is going to function in a more healthy manner when we achieve some degree of balance. And that means that we don't have one race that's superior to another. And even if you go back to the Bible or the Constitution, all of us are created equal. And I think that's the equilibrium that we should be striving towards. And we're going to have a much more functional, healthy nation that's more productive if we can create that balance. So white supremacy is a problem. It has always been a problem. It has continued through many, many hundreds of years to be a problem. And I think it's important for us to be well aware of it, because like Dr. Best said, the things that we aren't aware of, that we don't acknowledge, we can't address. There's no reason to address something that's not an issue. So, I think that these conversations are important because it highlights some of these issues, and it brings it to the attention of people who maybe haven't even given it any consideration. So In summary, I think it is a huge problem, and I think we need to address it. And the critical race theory is making that attempt.
Thank you so much. I think you're muted there, Mr. Esmel.
Thank you, Mr. Conrad. For those that are listening at home, again, we want to thank you for joining us. And we especially want to thank our special guests for taking time out to discuss such an important issue. So thank you again. And I'll get to the next question. In a letter to the editors, the American Scientist considers race as a folk taxonomy, not science, the practice coined by Carolus Linnaeus in 1737. Based on Linnaeus's division into 4 varieties of man corresponded to then known 4 continents of the world: Europe, America, Asia, and Africa. The variables used to organize it, such as skin color and hairstyles, are arbitrary choices. Do you have any initiatives in conjunction with CRT to remove pseudoscience and fake news from the Virginia curriculum? And we'll start with Mrs. Smith-Jones, please.
Okay. Thank you. This is the question, I think, okay, Tom Cotton was in Virginia. All right, so in reference to the Virginia curriculum, the state curriculum, then we have no jurisdiction over that actual curriculum. What we do have an opportunity to go forward and speak out when curriculum is being designed. That's what we can do. But to be able to remove pseudoscience and fake news, if that's in the curriculum, if it's something that's not correct, I'm not sure when they're saying fake news. If it's something that's inaccurate, absolutely. Curriculum is always being reviewed and revised, and you have an opportunity to make those corrections. But in reference to having an initiative, at this point, no, I do not have an initiative with the CRT, but to be able to remove something that is actually in there, if it's not true, if it's pseudoscience, then that's something you can address the education committee at the state level, if it's in the state curriculum. Thank you.
We'll move to Dr. King, please.
With what's been said. And of course, if there's information that our children are being taught that's incorrect or fake, as you would call it, we definitely want to have that removed. There's a process for removing that kind of information, but I would like to think that there's not fake news in the curriculum. I think we need to avoid people's personal opinions when it comes to the curriculum that we're using to teach our children. I think we need to stick more to the facts.
Thank you. And Dr. Best?
Yeah, I concur with the previous comments as far as me having a personal initiative regarding CRT to remove the fake news or the fake science. There's a way that is addressed through school divisions. But one of the things I do, and Governor Northam has actually, because it's been acknowledged that some of the ways that things have been taught, particularly in the state of Virginia, particularly regarding things like slavery, they were not the correct, or they were not the full picture as to how those things actually happened. A committee was formed, and there was some rewriting of curriculum, and there actually was a newly designed Black History course for high school students as a result of that. That's only the beginning, because in my opinion, Black history shouldn't be separate from American history. There should be American history, and we are part of that story. But you have to begin. You have to begin somewhere. So I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Thank you all so much for that. Our next question focuses from the source of another politician, a current politician, Tom Cotton, who proposed a bill to prohibit the armed forces from directly promoting what are the core tenets of critical race theory. And those tenets are that the United States of America is fundamentally a racist nation, that an individual, by virtue of his or her race, is inherently racist or oppressive, and that an individual, because of his or her race, bears responsibility for the actions committed by other members of his or her race. The bill also included a provision against segregating members of the armed forces by race, which has become common practice in many CRT training programs anyway. So let's tackle that here with Ms. Sandra Smith-Jones to start off. What is your opinion on Mr. Cotton's stance in his bill?
I lived in Arkansas for a while, so I know where this is coming from. When we say, when there's a statement that someone is saying that members of the armed forces should be separated by race, and we've had a long history of African Americans, of Filipinos, of immigrants, of all type of people serving in the military, protecting our country, protecting our lives, our families, and all. I think that is something that goes in the face of honor and dignity of those who serve for us and saying, thank you for serving our country. To segregate them, why? Why are we separating them when they're all out for one cause, to protect this country and honor our country? So why are we separating them? And when they say it's common practice, when he's saying that in CRT training programs, is there any proof of that? I'd like to know, is there any proof of the segregation that he's talking about in that? Oftentimes people are saying these things because they don't like the program or they need something to promote, to get an audience, to have a voice. And I think at this point in time, that's what it sounds like with a lot of these questions that are coming out, that are because it's a tool that people are using to advance a certain group of students and when you advance that group of students, you're advancing everybody because you can't discriminate. But people are looking at it one way, one-sided. I think that's wrong. But when you say to separate the military and armed forces, that's disheartening to me for someone to say, and why? I'd like to know why. What is the purpose that it would serve to separate them? And please give me some proof to show that CRT training programs, when the programs are training different people, that they're segregating people at the same time, and why?
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to move on to Dr. King, and I want to hear your thoughts regarding the military and tenets within CRT. Do you think it has a place to have at least some version of the education there?
Okay. I didn't hear you very well, but in terms of addressing your question, I agree with what's been said, that there's no reason to segregate a group of people who are all working towards the same common goal. When you start separating people out, you start creating division. So they're all working together for the same purpose. There's no reason to separate them out. When it comes to people being identified as being racist because of their color, I think that's ridiculous. That's called prejudice, when you assume that a certain person is a certain way just because of how they look or just because of the color of their skin. And that's the whole point that we're trying to make, is that we don't want to be judged based on the color of our skin. We want to be judged based on the content of our character. So because someone is white doesn't mean they're racist. Because someone is black doesn't mean they're not racist. And I think we have to look at each individual person and not judge people as a group because of one distinguishing characteristic. I think there's a place for CRT in the military, in the school system, and out in the community. So I think we need to really stand by the principles of CRT, and we need to make sure that we spread the word in every community and every organization that we possibly can.
Thank you so much. Dr. Best, should Senator Cotton have proposed such an idea?
Absolutely not. I think that he is misguided, mistaken, and uninformed. Beginning with, let me say that for CRT training and some other trainings that I have been a part of, as far as race relations, sensitivity, and just making people more aware as to what's going on around them, there has been exercises that were done where whites and blacks were separated, and they were giving a scenario, and they were asked, what would you think about this scenario? or how would you proceed after whatever happened in this particular situation? And what was found many times that there was a major difference in how situations were perceived. So in order to make that point live and a lived experience for the participants, that is how people were separated. But there has been no type of initiative by CRT to say, let's go back to segregation of the troops. So if you hear people maybe sometimes, I don't like that training because they separated us. Some of the separation is to make a point as to how people perceive things. So I just wanted to say that. What Mr. Cotton needs to be more concerned with, is my opinion, is some of the people that were a part of that insurgent activity in January at the Capitol. Many of those people have been identified as people that served in the military. And some of the comments and some of the things that were said by those members of the military, they were retweeted or they were reposted from some of these groups that they are members of, that many of us don't have access to. What would be concerning to me is some of the things that they say. And these are people that they literally have our lives protecting our country in their hands, but also our sons and our husbands and our neighbors and our friends of all different races, ethnicities, and religions. And they have opinions about people that are not very good. So that's what I would be more concerned about as far as the military if I was Tom Cotton.
Thank you so much for those words.
Thank you. I just want to let the folks that are home listening that we'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, please type those questions in the comment section on Facebook, and we will definitely get to you. And I will lead into our last question. I think I live on the razor's edge of naivete and idealism. I believe that we have far more in common than that which separates us. I think society and the media likes to put us into groups and likes to say that if you're a part of this group, you can only believe this. And if you're a part of this group, you can only believe this. I think people kind of cross boundaries or cross aisles or cross what they feel like are the extents of those boxes. So appointees to the CRT believe that it's a liberal attempt to spread indoctrination to push specific ideologies to reframe America as inherently racist, not the land of liberty, freedom, and inclusion. If you were speaking with one of these individuals, what would you say? And I'll start with Dr. King. I think you're muted, Dr. King. I'm sorry.
Yes, I think you're muted.
Okay, I'm sorry. There are definitely parts of America that are inherently racist, and I think any of us who turn on the news every day are very much aware of that. It's really not anything that we can ignore. It's sad that all these years after the ending of slavery that we're still dealing with the same issues, and we're still protesting and marching and fighting for our freedom and our civil liberties. And so if I were to speak to one of those individuals, what would I say? I would say CRT is not making an attempt to create anything that may be negative in America, because we as Americans have done a great job of that ourselves. Throughout history, we have taken advantage of and demoralized and stigmatized various groups of people, and not just exclusively African Americans. So I would say portions of America are racist. Not all of America is racist. This should be the land of the free for everyone and the land of inclusion. And we should not stop the fight to that end until we've accomplished just that.
think you're all muted.
I'm sorry about that. Dr. Best, we'll pass it on to you.
Okay, what would I say? I don't think it's definitely not an attempt to indoctrinate or even to reframe America as being inherently racist. I totally 100% disagree with that. What I would say to this person is it's actually, again, I keep using the word truth. It's about truth and it's about the whole truth. As far as the country is concerned, like I said, the preamble, the Constitution, some of the most profound and prolific documents that you would ever see in your lifetime, and especially if they were allowed to blossom into being what they were actually designed to be. So I probably would tell that person, then let's start right there. And then let's include all people. And if you acknowledge that at the time that was not written, all people were not included, then you would acknowledge that there were some people that were left behind for some of those liberties and the way that you could pursue life, liberty, and advancement. And then if you acknowledge that, then you would have to acknowledge that some things have to be done to bring those students, to bring those people up to a level playing field with all the people that were included when these documents and when this country was formed. So I would start with eating the elephant one bite at a time, just little things, one truth that builds upon another and builds upon another, because you're not going to be able to eat the elephant at one time and in one bite. That's how I would approach a person like this.
Thank you, Dr. Best. Mrs. Smith-Jones, you're obviously a proponent of the CRT. There's likely at least one person who is an opponent of the CRT. For those folks that are opposed to CRT, what would you say to them now?
Well, I would say read it, do the homework, do the research in the background, and really read it with the intent to understand what it's about. Not us against them, not you against me. What is it really about? And be bold when you're reading it and ask the right questions. And if you're sitting on a committee, a CRT committee, and you don't understand, then turn to someone that's on that committee, maybe someone that's not like you and not from your background, and ask the questions, ask the bold questions. But you have to be in a safe environment to do this. You have to feel that it's okay if I'm on the CRT team and I'm a white female or male, that it's okay to ask this question if I don't know, but be ready to receive the answer. It might not be something that you can tolerate or handle. But be in a bold place and ask the bold questions and make sure that we provide safe places for people who are opponents of it simply to understand. Because I don't feel that we have to continue to apologize when we're moving forward in the world. When we're moving our children forward, when our children are understanding the value of education, the purpose of education, that it's okay to go there and to flourish and aspire to have dreams and all that. And when we start to see that, others start to push us back. And then they start to use excuses like it's that CRT thing. No, it's the truth thing. And it's what, that the truth and the beauty. And when we talk about the life, the liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that's ours as well. And so I would say to anyone who's opposing it to simply just read it. Read it with an open mind. Read it with an open mind.
Thank you. Conrad? You're muted, Conrad.
Sorry about that. And thank you guys all for those answers. Our next question was not prepared, but it is recently came up. And it's a good question. So I want to have a chance to ask it. The question is, how does the lack of cultural awareness affect students' mental health? And I might expand on this a little bit because they say that racism is itself more taught than it is just it's not natural. It's a taught thing. So this could sort of touch on that in the sense that if we don't learn something like CRT, the culture is not aware of it. So how might that affect positively, negatively mental health? And we will begin with
Yes.
Who are we beginning with, Conrad?
Dr. Best. Sorry.
Okay. How does a lack of cultural awareness affect? Well, how does a lack of cultural awareness affect students' mental health? If you are constantly being told that you are less than, if you are being told or led to believe that you're unable to achieve as much as maybe other people around you, if you are constantly being told that you are a predator or an animal, or you are destined to be a statistic, those are kind of things that if they're told to you day after day, you begin to internalize them. If you never see positive reflections of yourself in textbooks, in movies, on news stories, and again, you see this and internalize it day after day, if you don't have intervention in your home, in your church, in your community to tell you otherwise, then those things that you are being told to you, or those images or things that you are being fed, you begin to believe them. And so that could influence you to actually make those things become a reality. So it's very, very important that when you are growing up, when you are educated in your religious realm, in your neighborhood realm, in the village, that you are fed positive images and positive things. And you're told about the greatness of your history, and you're told about overcoming adversity, and you're told about being able to accomplish in spite of, then that also, you internalize that and you begin to believe that you can achieve and you can do great things, and that you are worthy and that you are someone, and it makes you feel better about yourself. So I believe that not knowing about your culture and not being aware of who you are and what's going on around you, it can have a negative impact, most definitely, but knowing can have a positive impact as well.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Sandra Smith-Jones. What would be your opinion on cultural awareness and students' mental health?
Oh, I think cultural awareness is something that is truly, truly needed, and we need to bring it out, allow the children to talk about their cultural capital, what they bring to the classroom, to the teaching and learning environment, what are their experiences. That's important. And when we don't allow children to do that, and when we stunt their growth, when we don't allow children to share with us their experiences, that's their cultural capital that they bring in, their background, their religion, their experience with mom and dad that may be different from the teacher's experience. And so that's when the mental health can come into play, when they need someone to talk to support them, to let them know that my life, the way I live and the way my mom and dad live in our home and our cultures and our celebrations are just as important as anyone else's. So that cultural relevancy and building that culture, the climate within the classroom or the teaching and learning environment is so important, and it's so powerful for all of our children, no matter what background they have, to grow in. And so that helps their social emotional learning and capacity when they can share and they can feel proud of who they are and where they have come from and where they're going when they develop all this additional knowledge. So I think that's really, really important. Other than that, we confuse them. If we don't allow them to speak, to share their truths and their personalities and their background, then they're in a confused world. Why is it okay here at home and it's not okay to share And this is mom and this is dad. These are the people I love. These are the people who teach and care and nurture me.
Thank you so much. Dr. King, would you say that the teaching, the lack of cultural awareness, could it negatively affect mental health?
And so the word students is in the question. So we must be talking about in the educational arena. And so a lot of how our kids feel about themselves, a lot about their self-esteem, their confidence, how much initiative they take, how motivated they are, has to do with how they're treated, if they're acknowledged or not acknowledged, how they're responded to when they have comments or when they interact with people, especially people of authority. So if you have teachers in a classroom who are culturally unaware and they in any way even subliminally negate the cultural aspects of those students, if they lack understanding of their background, their upbringing, their values, their family system, and those kids that all feel any type of rejection by the authority figures or the teacher in the classroom, it's likely to have an impact on their self-esteem, their self-confidence, and even their mental health. It's so important that we acknowledge these kids, that we encourage them to talk, and that we accept their cultural differences. And there are inherent differences. It's really important that teachers are aware of that, because they're going to be better teachers for all of the students if they're aware of cultural differences. So when it comes to mental health, yes, it's so important that we are culturally aware, that we don't reject these students, their way of life, their upbringing, their family dynamics. So in order to not have that happen, we have to be trained and aware of the different types of cultures that may be in any particular classroom.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your stances on that. I would also like to personally thank Sandra Smith-Jones, Dr. Terry Best, Dr. Patricia King for coming on tonight to give your voices and opinions on this matter as we get ready to close out the show. Again, thank you so much. This is a dialogue we needed to start having locally in Hampton Roads, and I look forward to having more and more dialogues down in the future. How about any closing thoughts you might want to have? And let's start with Dr. Best.
First of all, I would like to thank you for having me on this panel, and I hope I've certainly learned listening to my fellow panelists, and also even learned from the question and the comments that were posed, and that's what this life is about. That's what this journey is about. That's part of the tenets of critical race theory is to continue to learn and to adapt to what we're learning. And so the times that we're living in now, it's almost crucial that we are able to talk, that we are able to communicate, that we make attempts to understand one another, and resolve to ourselves that we're all in this together. And when you thrive and when you advance, then I thrive and I advance. And when I thrive and I'm able to advance, then you thrive and you're able to advance. So I just encourage people to be open to getting to know all types of people, be willing to listen, and be willing to understand. And I look forward to just more dialogue, because this is only the beginning. And thank you again.
Thank you so much. Ms. Sandra Smith-Jones, your closing thoughts on the topic tonight and having this discussion.
Well, thank you so much, Conrad and Mr. Meeks as well, for having this conversation and bringing it forward, because I think it's so timely. Just recently, with some colleagues of mine in the education system, with administrators and teachers and from all backgrounds, literally, we're doing book studies, and you know, diversity, inclusion, and equity is one of the big things now. And we're reading Bettina Love's book, We Want to Do More Than Survive, about abolitionist teaching. And I would just share with your audience, if they can just get some of these books and start reading them, they will understand what CRT is really about. and what we're saying we're trying to do with a tool like CRT for teachers. And one of the other things I'll share with coming down the pipe, as we're all in Virginia, is some teachers, when they're getting evaluated with their observations and all, that principals and educators are now looking for CRT within their classroom. They're looking for culturally responsive classroom teaching and learning. And that's coming down the pipe. And it's going to be taught. And that's going to be on, to get your license in Virginia. That's coming. So we can look at it. And if people are concerned about it, they can have conversations at the state level, at the local level. But once it's, signed on by the state, then that's something we have to adhere to as educators and make sure that our classrooms are culturally responsive for all of our children so they can get the best education that any child can get, your child or my child. So I just want to thank you for having the forum, and thank you for sitting in with Dr. King and Dr. Betts. It's been a wonderful and enlightening time, and I have learned a lot. And have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Dr. King, your final thoughts.
Okay, and I just want to say thank you to you guys for having this forum as well. It's been very educational. I think we probably all learned a lot. I just want to emphasize what's already been said, and that is that we have to first acknowledge a problem before we can address it. When you have forums like this and you have wonderful panels like you've had tonight, it's the first step towards making some changes. We have to acknowledge the past to be able to move forward and to have a different future. And it's critically important that the teachers and all of us are culturally aware, because it makes us all better. Like Dr. Best said, though, when one person does better, the next person does better, and the next person does better. And so we're only as strong as our weakest link, which means we all need to move together in a positive and forward direction. And we don't want people lingering behind. So we need to bring everyone forward. We need to address any barriers that stand in the way, any issues from the past that are roadblocks to our future. And when we work together as a unit without separating each other and segregating each other, criticizing, demoralizing each other, we're really stronger as a unit to move forward. And I think with forums like this and educating the communities, that's exactly what we'll be able to do, is move forward together.
Thank you, Dr. King, Dr. Bess, Mrs. Smith-Jones. Thank you so much for your time. I too learned a lot from this conversation, and we hope to have more conversations. There were a lot of questions that we were unable to get to just because we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if there's a question that you were unable to have answered, please send it to us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/HR Black Caucus. And also, if you're interested in joining our organization, we are actively looking for new members to participate so that they can create events like this so we can engage on important issues like CRT. So again, thank you. And before we end, I'll pass it over to Conrad.
Thank you so much, Mr. Meeks. This has been a delight to share the stage with you tonight as we discuss this great topic. I'm floored with the fact that we've had so many viewers and so many commentators and so many questioners on here. Andrea Dixon, Don Page, Martha Smith, Thurot, Luis Cortez, so many names. Let me scroll back up. Jan Taylor, Mr. Bobby Malati, so many. If I keep missing, it's only because I'm right at the bottom of this thing. There's just so many people commenting. Thank you all so much for doing that, and do so next time when we have our next great dialogue here with the HRBC. I want to close out tonight by giving a little bit of my own opinion, because I got to admit the obvious here. It's 2021, and I'm very interested in deeply rooted political change, just conceptually, for the better. And I also got to mention that I'm interested in being a politician myself. And of course, it's very easy to see I am a white male. I want to make every day a day to not be anxious about my self-identity and not to be insecure about my place in the world. I also want others to be secure in their individuality and their social identities. And so that's why I like and appreciate a discussion like tonight's. as someone who wants to be a real influencer for positive change, it's important for me to be anti-racist. And that's a daily responsibility of frequent, consistent, equitable choices. These choices, they need my self-awareness. They need my self-reflection. In the absence of making such choices, I might unwittingly uphold aspects of a white dominant culture where unequal and unequitable institutions like schooling abound. Being racist or anti-racist is not really who you are. That's something we need to hammer home here. It is about what you do. And that's why I say we should study it. So thank you guys for watching tonight.
This show was brought to you by Positive Vibes Incorporated, our consulting services. We do credit fixes, we do tax resolution, we lend private money and debt consolidation. So if you need some of these services, we're waiting here for you. Credit fixes, tax resolutions, private money, and debt consolidation. Make sure you call Positive Vibes Incorporated.